So today I'm going to look at some mapping services that I use when I'm researching a new site. So this is from the National Library of Scotland. I type in the place I want to look at, somewhere I used to live, and it brings up this map. It gets exciting though when you click on the side-by-side link at the top here, and it gives you a contemporary map and an old map next to each other, so you can see the same place before and after almost. Also change the maps you're looking at. The other great thing is, as you move the pointer around on one side, it follows it on the other side. So for example, you can see the roads are the same, there's a footpath, even things like the recreation ground you can see over there has been kept as recreation ground on the contemporary map. So it's great for reviewing the current situation versus the old situation. So as you can see on here, you can also use the drop downs to change the map. So you can look at different types of map from an age point of view, and even the type of map it shows you. And you can do the same on the contemporary side as well. You can look at the different menu selections, and I suggest when you're getting used to it and playing around, just have an experiment and see which ones you prefer to look at, which ones work best for you. I tend to use the 1900s one on the left hand side, and usually satellite on the right hand side, but each to their own. There's plenty to see, there's plenty you can use. It's a great little service because you can see them next to each other, which is a fantastic tool when you're reviewing potentially new permissions and where you might want to start detecting. One of the great features for this side-by-side is the way you can look for older features on the left-hand side map on the older maps, like this footpath here. I'll show you later how we know FP means footpath, but you can see it on the map, and then you can look at it again on the right-hand side. Here again, circling around an inn, which is showing quite clearly there. You see on the right hand side, I know because I used to live there, that's also still an inn. So that inn's been there, that pub has been there for well over 100 years. So the surrounding fields are likely to have coin spills and things like that in it. Same with the footpath. It's a great tool for spotting features that are clear on the older maps that you can then use to look at on modern maps, and potentially look at where you want to target your detecting on your permissions. One of the other features I use is LidarFinder.com. I use this in conjunction with the side-by-side to find out what's actually going on the land surface itself, whether or not there are ditches, whether or not there are trenches, whether or not that footpath itself is visible. How it works is it's a laser survey, and it shows you impressions on the soil that you can't necessarily see from the naked eye. You can change the settings, things like that, have an experiment and a play. I'll link to and show you where you can find a really good guide for LiDAR later on in the video. But what you do is, on this one, it's a bit like side-by-side, but top and bottom, I guess. And you pull it up like this, and what it does is puts the LiDAR over the top of the map, so you can see the impressions on the actual ground itself. So here's where we were before, where the footpath is on the map, and this should help you see where the footpath is, because you can see the impressions in the ground, and these are depressions. They should be slightly lower ground, which is what you'd expect potentially if there was a footpath there and you can see it potentially trodden in. So you can, if you notice back on the side-by-side, the footpath was there. Zooming a little, you can still see it's quite clear there, but on the actual right hand side it's not as evident where it might be anymore. I mean, 100 years, I'm not sure if it's used as a footpath particularly anymore. On the LiDAR you can see that there's sort of an impression there going across that is probably the footpath showing through on the LiDAR, as people have walked on it over the centuries. And it would make a very great place for a detecting route on that permission, and to see whether or not, and remember to go either side of the path as well, people have dropped things if they've walked along and lost things to history, and hopefully lost it to your detector when you go down the path that you see on LiDAR on the side by side. I mentioned before as well how I knew that that was a footpath, because conveniently the Ordnance Survey have a great map abbreviations page on their website, which is nice and alphabetical. So scroll over to the alphabetical and go to F, and scroll up and down till I find FP for footpath. Go past it and then come back up. That was just me being stupid. I don't know what a face of paling is or a fire plug is, but footpath is there as well. If you see features and things on any of the older maps, it's always useful to look at this page to find out what it was and what it is. You never know what you're going to find on here. And just touching on LiDAR again, so this is the reference guide that I mentioned earlier. So Historic England have produced a 50-page guide to LiDAR, what it is, how it works, how you can use it for finding features in the landscape, and this is something that's used quite extensively by archaeologists these days. And the guide itself is a fascinating read. Again, the URL, the link for this will be in the video's description. So now moving on to tithe maps. Tithe maps were produced in the 1840s as a form of taxation. Here's the area we were looking at before, Cherwell, and you can see the familiar shape of the road and that sort of bow shape that we've got. But because it's an older map, there's no train line anymore. That didn't exist at this point, and some of the shapes are slightly different. It's a lot more rural, there's less buildings on it as well. So the tithe maps are probably the most detailed of the period that you'll get. Go back, like I said, to the 1840s, and therefore are really useful from that point of view. The other thing they're brilliant for is fields and field usage and field names. As you can see on here, each of the fields are split out on the map and are allocated a number. And these numbers are then used to identify the landowner, the occupier of it, and also the usage of the land and the field name as well, which can also be pretty useful when you're researching. Certain field names can indicate a potentially interesting usage in the past. So we'll look at how you move from those numbers to finding out the useful bits of information about them. And I'll show you tithe apportionment lists and how they work. So a tithe apportionment list accompanies the map, and as you can see, a pretty detailed record of what's on the map. The columns were filled in by the surveyors at the time, and I'll just show you how they work. So on the top you've got the who owns the land, what it's used for, the name of the field itself, and the number allocated to it. So you can see that, for example, here 222 was 5 acres, and it is pasture. The one above it, 221, was 3 acres and arable. You can see here, for example, 230 an orchard. So 230 an orchard on the map. Oops, I'll just get rid of this pop-up. 230 an orchard on the map would be really useful to detect on, because orchards were cultivated, people picked fruit on them, lost coins in them. I know one of my permissions on orchard has been very useful for George III coins coming out of it. So that's the sort of thing that you can pick up from the tithe information, the usage, whether or not something that is currently pasture has been arable in the past. Some of the names, as I said, can be really good clues as to what the field was used for in the past, and that can give you an indication of where to detect as well. And all together, if you put the apportionment map with the tithe map with the apportionment list, you get a really, really good view and sense of what the land was used for 160, 170 years ago. It can be a really powerful tool when you're looking at a large farm in particular and trying to prioritise where you dig first. The only slight problem you've got with the tithe information is not that easy to get a hold of. The only place online that has it is the Genealogist on their website. They're great if you're researching family histories and family trees. They have consensus information, and they have ships, passenger manifests, all sorts of things on it. And they also have, oops, get rid of the pop-up again, they also have tithe maps and apportionments for, well, most places, but not all places. If you can't find the area you're looking for, you may have to use your local archives, physical archives in the local council. But the Genealogist is definitely worth the first point of call. And they often have free subscription for 14 days and those sort of offers as well. They also have a shop, so you can buy binders and all sorts of things if you do get into the family history side of things. So the site itself has got a lot of resources if you're looking at sort of local history research, tithe maps, apportionment lists, and all the other things as well. Definitely worth a look. Definitely a really good and useful site. And like I said, with the 14-day free trial, if you've got some research you need to do, you can go and have a look yourself and see whether or not it'll give you what you want for your sites. If it does, then you can subscribe and use it more regularly, and hopefully that will give you a lot of information to combine with the historic maps and give you a really good picture of your permission throughout the last couple of 100 years, and that'll help you with your detecting. The other resource I wanted to mention was Visions of Britain, another great resource for history of areas. Also, it's got a good selection of old maps as well. So again, I've gone to where we were looking before, Cherwell, and you can see, click on this piece and it will show you the maps that they have access to or links to for the area that you're looking at. It's going to be really powerful to use to find alternative views, so you can build up a picture. I put them into PowerPoint and give my landowners a copy once I finish researching, so they get a really nice sort of like presentation package of all the history I found on the area, all the maps I found, tithe information if I have it, and those sort of things. And it's great for them, great for research for yourself to have sort of a document of it as well. And then of course you can then test your theory and work out whether or not that footpath you think you saw or the orchard actually will then throw up the finds that you would potentially hope that your research would suggest. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but it's a little less needle in a haystack than wandering around. You can leave that until you've exhausted all the clues that are given by the maps. And as you can see on the Visions of Britain site, we've got a lot of maps that you can go look at. Some are scales that are easily used, some of them less so. So here there's one where you can't see Cherwell anymore, but you can see the sort of the broader area from that point of view. So it's worth having a look through. For each area they'll have a different selection of maps, so it's worth having a look through and seeing what's available for the area you're focusing on, and whether or not it adds to the knowledge that you have for that site. And this isn't an exhaustive list of resources, but it's a good start. There's plenty more out there as well, so keep an eye on the description on the video, and I'll put some links to some of the sites that I use as well, in addition to the ones that we've seen as we've gone through this video. And I hope you found this useful, and please do subscribe if you have. And until next time, see you later.